back to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McKeever, and today is Wednesday, May 7th, and it's our privilege and pleasure to have with us today two guests who will be here to talk with us about the upcoming Southern Vermont Economic Summit Conference, which will be held on May 20th at Mount Snow, the ski area. With us today are Meg Staloff, who is the program manager for the Southern Vermont Economy Project, and also Bill Colvin, who is the executive director of the Bennington County Regional Commission. So they're going to be here today to tell us about this upcoming conference. It'll be the 8th annual conference that'll have been held. And it brings together business and community leaders from across the state, really, but focuses really on Southern Vermont and especially Bennington and Windham counties to analyze what's going on and how to solve whatever economic-related problems and issues that seem to be on the horizon. This year's theme for the conference is Adapt and Thrive. So Meg, let me start with you to have you kind of maybe walk us through the agenda. Every time I read through the agendas for these conferences, I'm always amazed at how many fascinating keynote speakers and panel conference discussions you've got lined up, and my problem always is trying to figure out which one am I going to go to in a given time slot. It's always a challenge, and this year you've really made it a challenge. So anyway, what will folks who will be attending this conference over at Mount Snow have to look forward to?
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, we do try to make it hard for people to decide which sessions to go to. We recommend bring a colleague so you can divide and conquer. But so we go broad with this conference. The idea is to have a really wide range of topics covered that address issues that are top of mind for a wide range of people, right? So whether you're a municipal leader or an elected official or someone working on economic development, like a chamber person, or a business owner, we hope there'll be content for you. So we base the content around our comprehensive economic development strategy, or CEDS, which really, as we worked on updating that document last year as a team across our region, the major theme that arose was this need for adaptation, right? The pace of change is unrelenting. Our communities need to learn to adapt to those and build a thriving economy together. So we structured the themes of the summit around our major objectives in the CED. So that means we'll be talking about people, we'll be talking about demographics, our need to grow our population, to reverse population decline, how to support people who are here and attract new people. So that's a big theme. We'll be talking about the need to empower businesses to thrive for the long term. So that's new businesses, that's entrepreneurship, that's businesses that are growing, that's businesses that might relocate here, that's businesses that are looking to transition, business owners who might want to retire and transition their business. So we want businesses to thrive long-term across that full spectrum. So we'll have topics, some breakouts based on that. We also want to work on fostering resilient, adaptable communities. So that's about responding to climate disasters. That's also social resilience. That's also community resilience. That's also, political resilience, all those things. Resilience is the way that we can recover from adverse events and adapt to the pace of change. So that really covers a lot of the community work that we talk about, and, municipal and community capacity. We're also, one of the big themes, and I think it's sort of what the summit embodies, is the need to grow our regional economic development alignment. So that means everybody working together, recognizing the big themes, coming together. So the summit is one of the biggest, most visible ways that we do that. We ask people to connect, to learn, to come together, to find new partners to work on projects or problems together with. So those are really the four kind of broad tracks of the summit, if you will. And then we take those tracks and I turn loose my brilliant colleagues here at BDCC and at BCRC, and we think about who do we want to hear from? What's the conference that we want to go to the most? And we get to build that and to bring that to you. So who do we want to hear from? What have we heard that was inspiring? And that's really how we put this all together. And it's done by a lot of people working separately, but in the same direction to put this all together. So we have 16 different breakout sessions and then a plenary talk and then a plenary panel. And then we also have the pleasure of giving out awards to our emerging leaders just before lunchtime. And we love to honor these people under 40 who are doing great work in our communities. So there's a lot for everyone.
No kidding. Oh my God. All right. Well, now I know. Now I really have a problem because I'm looking forward to going to it myself again. Because I mean, if it's May, then I got to go to this economic conference. It's always been quite fascinating. Well, Bill, I guess over to you. I mean, you know, in past conferences, we've talked about, or at least I've heard you folks talking about things like demographics and economic growth, as Meg was alluding to there. I guess I'm just wondering, you know, what are you seeing this year as sort of the major economic challenges facing the Vermont business community, or at least the business community here in Southern Vermont in particular? Is it still the same kind of demographics and affordability questions we've been hearing a lot about, or are some new things in the mix?
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And thanks as always for covering and promoting the event. And, you know, I do want to do a special shout out to Meg. There are a lot of people involved in putting this together, but really none of this happens without Meg. She's the glue that holds it all together and works tirelessly to pull out off this day. So really want to highlight that fact. So we've talked about, you know, you mentioned the first summit in 2017. It came out of, you'll recall, even prior to that, the Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone report, which was a joint effort legislatively directed between Bennington and Windham County. And if you recall back to when that came out in December of 2016, the very first line in that report was Southern Vermont needs to repopulate itself. That remains just as true, perhaps more true today, because we're 9 years older than we were in 2016, and the demographics have not really changed there. Although I guess Vermont has now moved to the third oldest state from the second. So it's second and third oldest county in the second oldest state, suggesting demographic challenges which remain. You highlighted another one, housing. Housing is at the top of everybody's mind now. We know that housing is an issue. We know that housing is an issue with regard to recruiting and retaining workforce. And if you go back again to kind of pre-pandemic days, as we would do our business visits, we would hear from our regional employers, what's your greatest challenge? It's workforce. That was only exacerbated as a result of the pandemic. And while it's bounced back some, as a state, we're still 5,000 people below our 2019 employment levels. So even as a state, we haven't bounced back to what was happening in 2019 with regard to employment. So those workforce challenges definitely remain. You know, we identify the theme of this conference 8 or 9 months in advance. It was well before the election, and we came up to adapt and thrive. And I think now more than ever, adapt is an instrumental word here for all of our businesses, and really, for all of the people living in Southern Vermont. We have kind of this new, we were talking before the taping began, this new word which has been introduced to the conversation around economics, and that's uncertainty. There certainly is a lot of that. There's a lot of uncertainty around what impacts the tariffs will have. Obviously, Vermont, as an economy, is very dependent upon trade with Canada. We know that's strained, and we know there are some challenges there. And I think everybody's trying to figure out exactly what that means for businesses everywhere. And that is certainly true here in the region. And then I would just note, Meg noted this importance of kind of building this economic development capacity and everybody rowing together. Now more important than ever for us to figure that out at the regional level. What we know for certain, there is no uncertainty around the fact that the resources from the federal level are going to be less. There are going to be fewer resources coming from the federal government. We don't know exactly what that looks like. We just know the direction that's headed. So now more than ever, working together as a region, being resourceful, collaborative, really becomes more important than ever.
And Meg, I was just wondering, listening to what Bill was just talking about there, given the fact that this whole uncertainty piece kind of really didn't come into play until earlier this year in, let's say, January, February. How were you able to kind of think about the speakers you wanted to have there or the panel leaders, given that, we kind of went from a different place in the final quarter of 2024 into the first quarter of this year? Were you able to kind of, since you were planning this, over 7 or 8 months ago, were you able to kind of adjust to the more recent issues like the tariffs and federal grant changes that have come along?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're relying on all our panelists and speakers and moderators who are smart and nimble and live in the real world to sort of really address those things. So we've really sort of, as I've been having a lot of calls with panelists to sort of get ready for the summit, and said, so what questions might we ask now that are different than questions I might have asked you in 6 months ago. So, I think that's just really how we'll roll with it, because, this is really, these panels are conversations, and they're, some of them are, purely informational, but a lot of them are ways to have conversation and be in conversation together and bring forward sort of the perspective that you have. I will say, we talk about this in our office a lot, like, our work will not necessarily change that much, and what we still know how it hasn't changed what we need to do, right? What we need to do remains the same. How we're going to get there may change, and the best way to figure that out is just to keep at it, keep trying. And so I think that's how our direction with our panelists and moderators are like, so feel free, if you've been thrown a monkey wrench in the past several months, like, what is that? And I know I'll be talking with some people about how communities can decide the direction that they want their community to go in, sort of in the face of flooding disasters that they need to recover from. Well, that is going to change radically, right? How we fund that. However, the way we go about doing that work is not going to change. And we hope it's actually more important than ever for communities not to give up on those projects, and not to give up on that important kind of background work. And we will all work together to figure out how that can be funded. I mean, if it can't, it can't, but at least to have that vision in place is really important. And that's really the main thing. And so that's what we talk about in resilience. It's like, okay, when you get thrown a curveball, how quickly can you recover? And who do you call? And who are the people that you can rely on? And so, the answer may be, when we have Stephanie Smith, the Vermont State Hazard Mitigation Officer, speaking, her answer may be like, I don't know. But I know for sure she's not going to give up on getting these projects funded that she has helped communities develop, right? And so even if the answer is, we don't know right now what the funding is going to look like for that, well, let's figure it out though. And those projects still exist. The need for them still exists. And so that's sort of our approach, is like, where are we now? How do we respond? I mean, Bill, I think I see you nodding. Maybe you have a different response.
No, it absolutely correct. And, I think traditionally, always one of the most important aspects of this conference is the ability to gain information and share information, both kind of in a more formal way through these panels or plenary presentations, but also kind of over lunch and at the breaks, and just the amount of information that is shared through this networking, which I think this year is going to be more important than ever. People are learning to be kind of creative in ways that they haven't before. And I also think there's going to be a certain cathartic element to this year's kind of conference. As everybody's been faced with a lot of change. We're dealing with it in different ways. And I think sharing that information and just kind of coming together with a group of like-minded, really smart people provides kind of this sense of comfort and kind of a renewed energy to move forward.
Bill, I was wondering, I'd like to zoom in a little bit on this whole workforce question that we were talking about earlier in the conversation, because it's as you pointed out, kind of this ongoing endemic issue. I mean, and I find myself wondering, what is it going to take to solve that? I mean, unless we have a replay of the 1960s when, everybody seemed to want to move to Vermont because it was the cool place to live. And the population of the state exploded. Or is a solution really pointing towards like technology and artificial intelligence as a way of, covering the fact that, well, I need people to do this stuff, but we have, high technology to kind of, offset that. Maybe is that a solution that is sort of beckoning for the future?
Yeah. So, I don't think there's a solution. I think that, there may be a number of paths forward. I think we will be hard pressed to see kind of an influx of people similar to, we kind of peaked as a population in the state in the early 1970s. And it's been kind of gradually declining to stable, with the pandemic bump kind of accepted there. But, otherwise it's been pretty stable over the last few decades. So we can nibble around the edges there. Unfortunately, we, when our original SEDS was created, we were facing kind of some national headwinds with regard to immigration, and then that kind of changed, and we had some real kind of made some significant gains in Southern Vermont with new Americans. And again, now we're in a different situation in that regard, and again, kind of facing those headwinds. So a strategy that we had that was beginning to address some of the repopulation concerns about bringing new Americans here, becomes more challenging now, to say the least. So again, we'll have to pivot and see what that looks like. Creating housing opportunities certainly is a part of that, and I think technology also has to be a part of that. But I think we need to understand what those challenges are. We need to ready the workforce to make sure that the jobs that are available are ready to be filled by people who are here, who perhaps want to change careers or move up in careers or re-enter the workforce after a life change of some type. So I think those are the things that we know we can do as we see what happens broader scale with regard to population in Southern Vermont.
Okay.
And I'll just add to that. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in too and say like that's really like at the very opening of the summit. That's kind of the theme is talking about this demographic shift, which is actually a national trend, right? This is not just us, but maybe luckily, maybe not. We've been on the vanguard of feeling this population shift as we kind of have a generational transition happening. So we actually brought some people who are big employers who work healthcare, construction, and education, and they're going to talk about solutions or things that they've been doing or how they've been feeling it and how they're responding, and just give them a chance to talk about kind of give a little hope or a little of just strategy and just really share that. So I think I'm really excited to hear from that group, to have our sort of national data, labor workforce analysts share this. Sounds like really bad news, but then it's like, oh, well, the good news is we've been facing this for quite a while, and here's what we've been doing. And I think there's a lot of strategies. I think there'll be a lot of great conversations that happen about what can we do, what are we doing. Can we do less with more? But can we, as we're certainly looking as employers, what can employers do to support the workforce that they have, or the workforce that's available to bring them in and support them? So we don't lose people too. That's the other, keep the people that we have who are wonderful and just supporting them as they move up.
Right. Well, and I noticed one of your panelists or speakers is Kevin Chu, who is proposing 802,000 people for the state. I'm going to have to ask him this time, is that because of the area code, or was that just, is that a number actually based on some hard data of some sort or another? But anyway, that'll be interesting to hear from him. I'm sure he'll be talking on that subject. Another topic I've heard frequently mentioned over the previous conferences is the whole nature of the challenges that pertain to a rural economy like we have basically in Southern Vermont. Is that seen as kind of a negative factor still, or are there opportunities presented by the fact that Bennington and Windham counties really are essentially rural areas, rural parts of the state? I know someone like Matt Dunn has been talking a lot about technology being a big opportunity for job growth and business growth in rural areas. Do you see that as something that some of your speakers or panelists may be addressing? Challenges to rural economies in particular.
Well, I think we'll kick off the day really talking about kind of like what is our Southern Vermont's economy. So this was actually Adam Grunwald, the executive director of BDCC. This is sort of his dream team panel that has Kevin Chu. We'll have our state treasurer, Mike Ziachek, will be talking. We'll have Arthur Wolf, who's a UVM economist, and then we'll have Dave Bradbury from the Vermont Center for Emerging Technology. So that's going to be a really interesting panel where they're really digging into like, what is our local economy when we're talking about our local economy, and that being a rural economy, that we've really spent time identifying our economy as specifically a rural economy, right? And so I think that's going to be a fascinating panel where they're going to be talking about, tried and true, economic data, but also just talking about kind of what things influence the economy and how can we influence the economy? How does it influence us? So that should be a fantastic panel that it's really going to sort of take a wide angle view at this whole thing. So what are we talking about? When we're talking about the economy, like, what do we mean? What is our role in it? How can we influence it? So I think a lot of interesting, that's going to be just a fascinating panel to open up the day. With some really fantastic viewpoints and some differing viewpoints there too. So I think it'll be a really, that'll be a great way for people to just kind of say like, you sort of, if your eyes glaze over when you think we're talking about the economy, this is not that. This will be a really interesting and stimulating and relatable conversation where hopefully, people can help find their place in the economy. That's our hope.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just quickly. That's that's a perfect overview. You hit on technology, Andrew. It's certainly an opportunity here. What we do know is that Southern Vermont has made fantastic inroads with regard to the distribution of fiber to even most of our most rural locations. So a little bit of work to do, but we've made terrific inroads relative to the rest of the state and most of the rest of the country. And that has presented opportunities. We know that people relocated here during the pandemic and have stayed as a result of the ability to kind of work remotely and access kind of cutting edge technology. So certainly an aspect of overcoming at least one of the challenges of a rural economy.
One of the other topics that always seems to come up whenever I'm in a conversation with someone from the business community is state regulations, housing. It also seems to happen a lot. I guess, is there going to be any panel or discussion around, if only we could make it easier for things to happen, like there wouldn't be so much, paperwork and bureaucracy and red tape to cut through. By golly, we'd build all the housing we need, and I could build a factory here and start employing 100 people or whatever. I guess I just wondered, is it your sense, do you hear that kind of concern about, well, there's just too much regulatory stuff I have to work through and it's just making everything go way too slowly? Or is that not really that much of an issue as far as either of you can tell?
So we certainly hear it. The state over the last 2 or 3 legislative sessions up until this current session has certainly tried to make some adjustments in that regard. Obviously, as a regional planning commission, we're now in the throes of creating these future land use maps, which will help address some of those permitting issues in certain locations. So we hear it. We just last week had the first major Act 250 application in our region since 2013. So there's not that many projects which are triggering kind of that Act 250 level of review. There are other projects, there are other kind of lesser permitting issues, which perhaps take longer than anybody would like. It's an issue that we do discuss on the regular. But if you were to identify the challenges facing the Southern Vermont economy, I would not rank permitting or regulatory challenges terrifically high on that list. I think there are several other much more serious challenges that we need to address head on.
So, Meg, I guess we'll have you finish up here for us. Somebody watches the show and thinks, "Oh my God, I got to get to this conference." What do they have to do? Is there a website or a email address, or how do they get signed up for it and registered?
Yeah, so we would love more people to register. We have a really great crowd expected, but there's room for more to join, and we want to fill this. We have a big room, and we like it to be full and buzzing. So yes, people can still purchase a ticket and register. So we have a website where we host kind of our regional work. It's So Vermont Zone, so Vermont spelled out, so sovermontzone.com. And through that site, there's link on the front page that gets you right to the summit. There's a header bar that will get you to the summit, and there's a link there to register. If you just wake up that morning and you want to come and you haven't pre-registered, that is okay. You can purchase a ticket at the door. So feel free to just, if you wake up at 7 a.m. on May 20th and you'd love to come on over. We'll get you signed up. But till then, and we will cut off online registration mid-morning on Monday, so that we can get ready to go over and set up. We're a small team, so register by mid-morning on Monday at sovermontzone.com. And if you miss that deadline, no fear, we'll register you at the door. And yeah, it's a terrific crowd. So, and it is at the Mount Snow Grand Summit Resort. So we have directions to get to the best parking place on that website as well. And yeah, the more the merrier, please register and come.
But you'll have to leave your skis and poles at home, I guess. No snow in Mount Snow at this point.
No snow. I was actually just up there yesterday. It's very green, and it's fairly quiet at this time of year. So it's a great time to visit. But it's just greening up. It's, the elevation there, the spring is a little later. So you'll get to re-experience spring when you come in 2 weeks.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there for today. And, hopefully folks who watch this will pencil in May 20th on the calendar, 9 o'clock in the morning, to be there at Mount Snow and hear everything you need to know about the Southern Vermont economy and more besides, I'm sure. Anyway, I want to thank Meg Staloff, the program manager for the Southern Vermont Economy Project, and Bill Colvin, the executive director of the Bennington County Regional Commission, for bringing us up to speed on what to expect at the Southern Vermont Economic Summit Conference. And Meg, Bill, thanks again. I appreciate you making the time for this conversation, and we'll see you there on May 20th.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right.
Thanks so much.
And thanks to all of you who shared part of your day with us today. Hope you found the show interesting, and, well, we'll see you again the next time. Meanwhile, take care. Thank you.